Greetings, silent filmgoers. My name is Garry Eilers, and this is a recap and review of Suspense, a 1913 American silent film thriller directed by Lois Weber and Phillips Smalley. Not only does Weber star in this film with Valentine Paul, but she's also the writer. According to IMDb, she's credited with directing 135 films, writing 114 of them, and performing in 100. There is quite a lot to say about Lois Weber, her career, and influence in silent films. But for the purpose of this video, the most relevant thing to mention is that Weber is credited with pioneering the use of the split-screen technique, which is on full display here. The film begins with the maid, played by Lul Warrington, entering the kitchen. With her coat on and suitcase in hand, it's pretty clear she's planning to leave. She looks through the keyhole into the next room to see the wife, played by Lois Weber, checking on her infant child. The maid expresses some doubt, but ultimately decides that she's making the right choice. Before she leaves, however, she writes a note. I am leaving without notice. No servant will stay in this lonesome place. I will put the back door key under the mat. Mammy. So Mammy sneaks out undetected and, as promised, leaves the back door key under the doormat. She makes her way to the main road and walks away for good. A moment later, a tramp, played by Sam Kaufman, sees where the maid just came from. He decides to check the house out for himself. My guess is that he thinks no one is home, but we know better. We see the husband, played by Valentine Paul, working hard in his office. Seeing how late it is and knowing how late he's going to be, he calls home. I won't get home until late. Will you be alright? Either that's a misspelling or that's just how alright was spelled back then. Here, we get the infamous split screen, but it's actually split into three. As the couple talk on the phone, the tramp approaches the house. It's very likely that he overhears the wife talking to the husband and thus confirming that there is no one else in the home, or at least anyone who can defend. When the wife looks for Mammy, she finds the note instead. The wife thinks about calling her husband, but decides against it. After all, what's he going to do about it? For good measure, the wife goes around the house, closing the windows and locking the doors. After she leaves the living room with the baby, we see the tramp looking in. The wife takes the baby upstairs into the bedroom. Meanwhile, the tramp seems to really take his time trying to break in. As he approaches the back door, the wife apparently hears his footsteps. She opens the window behind her and looks down. In that moment, the tramp looks up. A tramp is prowling around the house. Yes, we know that. The wife quickly calls the husband while the tramp finds the key under the doormat. Now he is opening the kitchen door. Indeed, we see him opening the kitchen door. Now he is in but the tramp cuts the line in true horror fashion. With no way to communicate with her, the husband acts on instinct. He runs out of his office and steals the first car he sees. The owner of the car, played by Douglas Gerard, calls over a police officer. In literally seconds, a police car shows up. They get in and give chase. While in the kitchen, the tramp helps himself to a sandwich just sitting in the cupboard. The husband races down the street like a madman. The police aren't too far behind. Back at the house, the wife has the good sense to barricade the door with the vanity dresser. After the tramp finishes the sandwich, he grabs his knife and enters the living room. A young boy stands in the middle of the street, smoking a cigarette. The husband rams into him with the car, and then proceeds to help him back up. Not a big deal then. However, it does slow the husband down just a bit. As he sees the police car approaching over the hill, he gets back behind the wheel and takes off. The tramp looks around for anything of value. When he doesn't find anything after only opening one dresser drawer, he suspects that any valuables are likely to be upstairs, possibly where the wife is hiding. We see the police car getting ever so close to the stolen vehicle, but for whatever reason, the police cannot catch up. The tramp makes his way up the stairs, looking pretty deranged. While the wife hides behind the bed with her baby, the tramp smashes through the paper-thin door and, with one hand, moves the dresser back. So, not that heavy then. Even worse is the fact that the wife left the key in the door. The husband jumps out of the car while it's still moving. Not sure why, but it's theatric. Since he didn't break either ankle, he runs towards the house. The tramp enters the bedroom, clearly intent on killing the wife and possibly the baby. The wife has nowhere to run. As the police run after the husband, they open fire. The gunshots scare the tramp and he runs out of the room. As he runs down the stairs, the husband catches him and they quarrel. Before anything else can come of it, the police arrive and smartly apprehend the tramp. This gives the husband the chance to run upstairs to find his wife and baby shaken but unharmed. Shortly after, the owner and police come in. The husband is able to explain what was happening and why he had to do what he did. Surprisingly, the owner shows compassion and understanding. He turns to the police and basically decides not to press charges. The end. One of the most curious aspects about the film, if not the most curious aspect, is the circumstance surrounding the maid's decision to leave. First of all, she's leaving without notice. That happens, especially if, for example, she just found out about a relative falling ill and just wants to return home. Another plausible scenario is the maid having been offered a better paying job elsewhere and has to leave right away. Neither of those are the reasons. According to her, she leaves because she feels lonely in her workplace. While that's sad and all, I don't see why that would make her decide not to tell them ahead of time. I mean, they have a baby. Ditching them like this leaves them vulnerable, and maybe, just maybe, that was the point. That's right, my theory is that the random set of events aren't random at all. It's one hell of a coincidence that the tramp just so happened to be walking along the road as the maid leaves the house. Moreover, what made him decide to check out this particular house? I suppose you could argue that he saw the maid carrying the suitcase, but still, had there been more people in the house, surely someone would have spotted him. I'm just saying he had a lot of confidence going up to the house in broad daylight. Not only does he approach the house, but he sticks around too. Eventually he finds the key under the doormat, which isn't too surprising given how that has sort of become a cliche. Something else that gives my theory credence is the fact that there is a ready-to-eat sandwich just sitting in the cupboard. Wouldn't that go in the fridge? Were there fridges back then? I don't know. What if Mammy made the sandwich intended for the tramp to find and eat? What if she wasn't paid very well or treated very well and figured to get her revenge by having someone else steal from them? It's a stretch, of course, but it's something that popped into my head while watching this. So I thought the wife did everything she could have done to protect herself and the baby, except for maybe barricading the door even more. Oh, and taking out the key. Seriously, she just left it in there. Although it probably wouldn't have done that much since the doors are paper thin, but yeah, at least she didn't faint or do some other stupid cliche. It's pretty funny that the husband takes it upon himself to save his wife, rather than enlist the help of the police. After he steals the car, the police arrive almost instantly, so you would think that they would have been quick to help. However, it's because of the chase that leads to the gunshot that scares the tramp. If there was no chase, who knows what would have happened. Well, I'm pretty sure that the young man wouldn't have been hit by the car. It's hilarious how he just walks it off, like it was no big deal. The use of title cards helped at times, but not always. The way they were used was a bit clunky and inconsistent. Given how Lois Weber is known for using film as a social and moral tool, it's surprising how Suspense doesn't really have something to say. I mean, I guess you can argue that since the husband ran from the police to go save his family, some rules are meant to be broken. If that is indeed the moral, then it would have been more obvious, at least to the audience, if we saw him first trying to enlist the help of the police and being turned down. Then we would have understood the need to steal the car and go home. All in all, a good film. Dare I say it, a suspenseful film. This is just one entry out of many from the great Lois Weber. Next time, we'll be looking at the feature film Body and Soul from 1925 and directed by Oscar Micheaux. Until then, take care.